The LA protests, the LA riots, they were not some peaceful gathering of people saying, we just want immigrants to get a chance. These were people who literally were saying we want to reconquer the southwest area of the United States of America and give it back to Mexico. There's a very different thing going on out there, and ICE has a really hard job, but the DHS is getting it done and getting it done right. Tricia McLaughlin, of course, is the DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. Love having you back, Tricia. How are you?
I'm great, Joe. How are you?
I'm
Thanks
doing
for having
very
me.
well. No, you're very welcome. So we're watching what was happening in LA, and we know that it wasn't people just going, hey, listen, we want immigrants to come in. Hey, we want a path to citizenship. These were people burning cars, attacking ICE. One senator attempted to, it looked like he was trying to attack the DHS secretary. We'll get into that in a second. But as you watch that unfold, was it clear immediately to the DHS that this wasn't just some peaceable gathering of Americans who wanted to be heard? There was something else going on there.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. And I think it was very clear to the President of the United States as well. I mean, if you look at 2 Fridays ago when this all started and in Los Angeles, it started because we were enforcing the law with ICE
Right.
operations. We were arresting the worst MS-13 gang members, convicted murderers, rapists. And then these rioters started. And what they started doing was surrounding a federal building that was holding ICE enforcement officers. And they started pummeling our law enforcement with rocks. Then cars started burning. Then they started burning American flags while they were hoisting foreign flags. And
Right.
thank God President Trump had the foresight to say, we need to get additional boots on the ground. And he called in the National Guard and he called in the Marines.
And thank God he did, because LA still exists today because of that. Otherwise, it might have been overrun completely. And again, we've had people who went out there. I don't know if you know Ami Horowitz, but he's an independent journalist. He's a documentarian. He went out there and he asked people directly, "Why are you here? Is this about due process? Is this about immigration? Is this about a path to citizenship?" And to a person, they said, "No, we hate the establishment. We hate this country. We hate the government the way that it is. This is because we want wholesale change." So it turns out, Tricia, they were Marxists, they were progressives, they were communists, they were anti-American activists. They weren't, because you can probably deal with people who have a question about immigration. You can't deal with somebody who just wants a completely different country.
Oh, absolutely, Joe. And what we also are looking into and investigating with Homeland Security investigations with the FBI and the IRS is that these protests, like they did in 2020, look highly coordinated. They look highly funded. And so we're looking into, is it our adversaries who are coordinating this, who are funding these efforts, bringing in pallets of bricks to then throw at our law enforcement officers?
Right.
This is something we're absolutely looking into. And I mean, it is despicable, as you say, Joe, as that they're burning American flags as they hoist foreign flags. It's disturbing to watch. This isn't about bettering our country. It's about tearing it down.
I want to talk about the process, if you don't mind. It's Tricia McLaughlin from the DHS. The process, I've talked to Tom Homan about this a lot of times. The process is, as you said, let's get the worst of the worst. Let's get those who are not only criminals for breaking the law coming across the border, but have committed heinous crimes while here. And you guys are doing that very well where there's cooperation. In a place like LA, which is a sanctuary city, a state like California, sanctuary state, just like Massachusetts and Illinois and several others. You can't just go in there and pinpoint where the bad guy is, because you're not getting cooperation from the local law enforcement authorities. So you have to go in and do these raids. And when you do the raids, Tom Homan calls them collateral. You're going to end up getting other people that are in the country illegally, because everybody's going to get identified. When you go in to get the really bad guy who might have raped somebody, who might have driven drunk and killed a family, when you're going in and getting them, whoever else is in the apartment, in the house, wherever they happen to be, is going to be ID'd. And if you're here illegally, you're also going to go. They would not have gone otherwise had Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass just cooperated with law enforcement. Do I have this right?
That's exactly right, Joe. And the American people should know what the media doesn't want people to know is that 75% of those individuals who have been arrested since the start of this administration have prior convictions. So they are criminal illegal aliens. But further, I mean, there doesn't need to be a single arrest of somebody who's come into this country illegally, because they should just leave now and self
Yes.
deport. The U.S. taxpayer is so generously offering them $1,000 and a free flight home. They should take advantage of it, because if they don't, they will be found, they will be arrested, and they will be deported, Joe.
I do information for a living, as you know. I hadn't heard the number 75%. That's massive. So over 70%, 75% of those who are here illegally that you've gotten have also committed some other crime on top of crossing the border.
That's right. Whether that be a DUI
Stunning.
or a violent crime or a white collar, they have some sort of conviction or pending conviction.
And the media is not talking about that at all, are they?
Oh, no, of course, you hear about, these are innocent people who have been here for 10 years, for 20 years. I mean, of course, constantly pushing sob stories, and what we found so often, Joe, is we, on a daily basis get a new sob story, but what we're finding is there 99.9% of the time, there's more to the story than they're letting on. I mean, I just dealt with a New York Times story where, they did this whole Vogue-like cover shoot of this man who's been in the United States for 30 years from Jamaica. Well, turns out for 15 of those 30 years, he was in a U.S. prison
Oh, come
for
on.
kidnapping. But they don't mention that.
Of course not. You would think that they would want the real story out there. This is why I love having you on. Thank you. Thank you for telling everybody who's watching and listening exactly what's going on. Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. So you go in and you get the bad guys and you're getting rid of them, which is what you should do. And again, these sanctuary cities and states, I believe it's against the law. I don't know if there's an actual law that says you can't do what they're doing. If they stand in the way, aid and abet, and also help to hide people, now they are certainly breaking the law. But when it comes to being a sanctuary city, state, county, is there a literal law that says you can't do that? I wish there were, but is there one?
Not at this time. I mean, I think that Congress could act and we could certainly look at changing that. I think we should. But I do think there is a silver lining here. We have a fantastic U.S. attorney out of Los Angeles, and he's really putting forth what could be a blueprint for these other sanctuary cities. It is a felony to re enter the United States after you've previously been deported. So
Right.
when he's locating these illegal immigrants, he automatically gets a warrant for them based on that felony, and so that we can pull them out, arrest them, and pull them out of this country and deport them.
Yeah, this guy is so good. I know that we had one there that wasn't very good. Now the new U.S. attorney is excellent. Tricia McLaughlin from the DHS. You talked about self-deporting. I think Allie Bradley, who reports for News Nation, does a great job on the border. She reported that a ton of people are self-deporting. Do we have numbers on that? Are people taking you up on this offer?
We have at least tens of thousands who have used that CBP Home app, which is that app that this administration has offered. But we're hearing even higher numbers than that. We're hearing about people just turning straight around at the border because they're hearing the message, they're hearing the deterrence that if you come here illegally, you won't be able to return. Versus if you self-deport and leave now, you preserve that opportunity to potentially come back the legal right way.
It's such a great incentive. You get $1,000, a free flight home, and you can start the process immediately of doing it legally. What's the downside? I don't get it.
There isn't a downside. And that's the thing. It is a no-brainer. And what I don't understand about Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and these other sanctuary city politicians is they continue to say that they care about these migrant communities, these illegal aliens. If they actually cared about their welfare, they would encourage them to leave now so that they could preserve the opportunity to potentially come back the legal right way. And by the way, getting a free flight home and $1,000 to restart your life and your home country is a
Yeah.
fantastic incentive. It's very generous to the U.S. taxpayer.
DHS.gov. It's DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs, Tricia McLaughlin. We love the time and the access. Gavin Newsom is a guy. I'm not going to ask you about him personally. You probably don't know him. I don't know him personally, but he comes off as an actor to me. I'll just say that. I'm not putting words in your mouth. But on camera, he says, "Come and arrest me, Homan. Come and arrest me, Donald Trump." And then he calls Trump, and he's nicey nice. He must know that he was just saved. His entire city was saved of Los Angeles. I don't know if they wanted more riots to say that Trump caused them. They try to say that Trump caused them. Talk to me about the process of saying, yes, let's bring in the National Guard. Yes, let's mobilize the Marines to support them. Yes, let's save this city. Because of what happened in 20, was that why the action was so quick by the administration? Let's not let that happen again.
Joe, I think you absolutely nail it. President Trump saw what happened in 2020 with our great American cities burning to the ground. And he said, we're not going to let that happen again in 2025. Just a few weeks ago, as I mentioned, when these riots started, there were protesters completely outnumbering our ICE law enforcement. We were seeing that they were starting to get increasingly violent, and they were vastly outnumbering them. So that's when that decision was made. That was a Friday evening. And then for the past week, last week, we had riots who were not peaceful, and we still saw massive amounts of looting and assaults on our law enforcement. But I think that they could have been a lot worse had we not had the National Guard and those Marines so bravely on the ground. And I do think I have to say, Joe, Americans can be so proud of our law enforcement in the face of, really taunting and assault and such disrespect. They have stood with such professionalism and patriotism. And I am so proud of them.
Tricia, I'm glad you brought up looting because I never understood how you get a pair of Air Jordans because of immigration, or you get to go steal a big screen TV. That didn't make any sense. But that whole thing was shut down almost immediately when the president sent them in. Let me ask you about the one big beautiful bill. What's in there that ICE needs, that DHS needs? What provisions are in there that the American people watching and listening need to know about? Is it about the wall? Is it about technology? Is it about all of that? Is it about getting more agents? What does DHS need from the one big beautiful bill?
It's the wall, it's technology, as you mentioned, but something I think we're really pushing for is the fact that right now in the United States, we have 20,000 ICE enforcement officers. If this big, beautiful bill passes, we will fund 10,000 more ICE enforcement officers. We need to get these arrest numbers up. We have a mandate from the American people on mass deportations, on mass arrests, and we can only do that if we have the bodies and the brave men and women in law enforcement to help execute on this. We saw what happened in California and LA with these mass amounts of riots, and we know we need a bigger and workforce.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I've had people on from the Border Patrol who say the morale has changed. They're actually hearing from the DHS secretary. She's going there a lot. They're hearing from you. They're hearing from President Trump. What do you need? It's such a sea change. When you came into the job, was that one of the first things that were pointed out? Tricia, we've got to make sure that these people who are putting their lives on the line at the border, make sure they understand that we have their back, because nobody had their back for 4 years.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that you saw Secretary Noem. She was frequently going to the border. She was frequently going out on ICE operations. In fact, there were a number of hit pieces in the press criticizing her for not sitting behind her desk. Well, she's actually going out and showing up for these men and women at ICE, at CBP, at the Coast Guard. I mean, she has a 280,000 employee operation here at Department of Homeland Security.
Huge.
And it has largely been demoralized for the last 4 years. Mayorkas wasn't doing anything but getting impeached and really villainizing our CBP officers. You guys remember Whipgate probably. And of
Yes.
course, our ICE enforcement officers weren't doing anything. So we're very proud of the men and women of DHS. And I'm so proud of Secretary Noem. She shows up for them each and every day and shows we have your back. And also we're going to get you guys the resources you can to succeed and to be safe while you're doing your job.
I never heard it called Whipgate. For those who are watching and listening, though, there were Border Patrol agents that were using as a tactic their reins of the horses they were riding just to dissuade people from coming across the river illegally. There was a picture taken that looked like one of these reins was close to an illegal immigrant, and it wasn't. Even the photographer said, no, they were nowhere near the guy. They were just waving them around to get them to go back and turn around and not keep on proceeding into the United States. Well, the left, of course, and the DHS, of course, all said, that it's a reminder of the KKK. It was so ridiculous. What bothers me is that nobody ever apologized to those guys. It was proven over and over. They were nowhere near hitting somebody with the reins, but because the person happened to be from Haiti, I believe, and he happened to be dark skinned, and the person on the horse was a white guy, all of a sudden it was the KKK all over again. Hey, I think that President Trump has reached out to them since and made nice there. Of course, he had nothing to do with it. Does DHS Secretary Noem feel as though she needs to let them know every day we're not going to let that happen again? Because, as you said, the media is against you. The left is against you. You've got idiots like Gavin Newsom, my word idiot, not yours, who are against them. How do you keep that support going? Because it can be, as we just talked about, demoralizing. And those poor people had their entire lives affected horribly because of the lies about the whipping.
No, absolutely. And Joe, actually, it was in the first 2 weeks after Secretary Noem was sworn in, she went down to the border and actually met with those very agents on the ground. And so, I mean, they need to know we have their back. No, I mean, these are the people who are on the front lines, who deal with the cartels, who take them on head on, who deal with drug mules and criminal illegal aliens, and they put their lives on the line for us. So absolutely, we have their backs. And Secretary Noem made sure to convey that and really apologize on behalf of the U.S. government that was ever allowed to happen and that smear occurred.
It is Tricia McLaughlin, DHS Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs. I want to quickly ask you about the farm workers. I know that President Trump was saying, okay, we're gonna exempt them for now. Now it looks like he's not going to exempt them. What's the status of people? I'll give you a little background. You didn't ask, but let me give you a little background. I grew up in South Florida. We had migrant workers. They came in legally, cut the sugar cane, got the citrus, went back to Mexico generally, or where they came from, with the money they earned, and they had a great amount of money to live the rest of the year. The next growing season, they'd come back in legally and do the migrant work again. For some reason, that's not happening anymore. People are coming here illegally and getting jobs on farms, and it seems as though the president has said, well, maybe we're going to exempt them, and now maybe we're not. What's the status of that?
So, worksite enforcement operations are going to continue. They're very much
Okay.
the cornerstone of our enforcement operations. I mean, we are seeing a lot, though, of exploitation of these illegal immigrants. We see drug trafficking, human trafficking, labor trafficking on these worksite enforcement operations as well. I mean, I mentioned exploitation, but talk about unsafe working conditions. So,
Yes.
this is something we're going to continue doing and not pause on.
It is Tricia McLaughlin. One last question. I see Alex Padilla show up, and I probably couldn't have picked him out of a lineup. I know what he looks like, but generally speaking, if he shows up in a pair of jeans and a denim shirt at some press conference, I don't know who the hell the guy is. He shows up clearly to get a viral moment, and everybody who's seen that video, you can't argue. Not only is he there, and he won't stop shouting over the opening statement from the DHS secretary, which is completely out of protocol. He keeps advancing towards her. And when an agent, either FBI or Secret Service, I'm not sure who he was, tells him, you got to back up, he literally tries to plow over the guy. He's much bigger than the guy. Thankfully, the guy is very good at his job and stops him. Can you just, in a nutshell, tell me what was going on that day? What was the plan by the DHS secretary? Did she have any idea he was going to show up?
No, she had absolutely no idea he was going to show up, and we had no idea who he was. So we are in a secure facility, as I mentioned before, where those protests and riots began was around this federal facility.
Right.
That's the secure building that we were in. This was an invite-only press conference. You had to go through security. Apparently, Senator Padilla had a meeting in that building beforehand. So he entered this press conference on false pretenses. He was not invited. He doesn't introduce himself to the secretary as she's
Right.
doing her opening remarks. He just starts shouting questions. No one knew who this man was. We just thought it was an unhinged protester who broke into the press conference, which in some ways he was. As soon as we figured out it was Senator Padilla, he was let go, and Secretary Noem graciously had a 15-minute meeting with him afterward. But it
Right.
is conduct that's unbecoming of any person, much less a sitting U.S. senator. And I have to say, as we're seeing increased political violence, the fact that you would act so aggressively towards someone who's giving a press conference, Secretary Noem can handle herself. But I will say this: if that had been a Republican man shouting down and rushing the podium of a sitting Democrat female cabinet member, the left would be having a field day, and he would be challenged all over the Sunday shows. You haven't seen any of the criticism from the left or the media at this point.
Now, the left sat down with him and said, I felt so bad for you. I watched that video. It was horrible. They brought you to the ground. If had it been me, I would be arrested and charged. She was gracious enough, as you said, sits down. They exchanged phone numbers, had a great conversation for 15 minutes. Then he leaves and talks about how we're the Gestapo or something. It's all very, it didn't work out in his favor. Let me say that, because nobody wants to see that. Whether it's a female DHS secretary or a male, it doesn't matter. This big guy shows up and he's charging federal agents like he's not going to, like a bull. Like he looked like he wanted to get to where she was. They did the right thing. He's lucky he hasn't been charged. Tricia, I appreciate you coming on. The knowledge is so amazing. You just gave numbers and facts that nobody else is talking about. So I really appreciate the job you're doing. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Joe. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. We're back after this. Stay right here.